kick things off here, for those of you who don't know me, which is maybe a lot of you, I'm Eric Mundall, HR Director here at the College of Science and Engineering. And I'm about 3 weeks in, enjoying myself thoroughly. Love it here, love connecting with the folks here in the Dean's office, and really look forward to having a chance to connect and interact with those on the Zoom call here as well. So looking forward to this chance to talk through the Simplified performance review process. I know that Christina, who is sharing time with us here with the Leadership and Talent Development team, with the Office of Human Resources, has spoken on this topic before, but we're super delighted to have her back again this year to talk through the process and just make sure that everybody feels comfortable and aware of what it is that we're doing here from a performance review perspective at CSE. For those that are on the call today, I'd just like to let people know that we are recording this Zoom meeting. That's so that for those that were unable to join us today, that they'll have an opportunity, if they would like to be able to access the information. So just want to make people aware of that now. With that, I am going to turn things over to Christina. Christina, thanks again so much for being here. I really look forward to the training today.
Yeah, thank you, Eric, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this workshop about the Simplified performance reviews. Next slide, we're going to have an opening from the Dean, and after that, we're really going to dig into the strategies and answer any questions you may have about both the process and also about the system, the performance appraisal tool that is there to support the process as well. Eric, I saw you unmute. Was there something else to add at this time?
No, that's
okay.
it. So
okay. Yep, absolutely. So yeah, I used to work with Joy when she was the HR lead at CSE, and now working with Eric, partnering to bring you guys these concepts and stuff like that. So you may have seen me when this kicked off, I think about a year ago now, and throughout the year as well. So great to be back today. And please add anything to the chat if you do have questions. Eric and I will be monitoring it throughout the workshop today. And if you do have anything, post-workshop as well, you can always reach out to Eric in order to get any questions answered that you may have as you go through the session or through the process to close out the year. So let me see. So why does CSE do performance evaluations? This is a short video from the Dean to open it. Hopefully it works as well as it did when we practiced. So here we go.
So I want to thank you all for joining the CSE Annual Review Workshop for employees. It's a very important workshop to help all of the staff within CSE achieve the best performance they can be to help CSE be the best organization that it can be. So the recently published CSE Staff Employee Engagement Survey showed that there is a high level of engagement at CSE amongst the staff. However, it was made clear that there are opportunities to improve upon this in view of the performance management process. And we heard you, and this workshop that we're offering is an effort to respond to some of the suggestions provided for improvement, including a greater emphasis on the employee development opportunities, having the supervisors actively engaged in this employee development opportunity. And we hope with this coupling, we'll have an outcome that we all want, which is more satisfied, more fulfilled staff, and supervisors that can be really proud of their staff that they're responsible for. Another thing that was made clear in the engagement survey was that there was a desire for the supervisors to provide clear and regular feedback to the employees, not just at the end of the year, but providing feedback throughout the year, not just on what wasn't working, but also what was working really well and should be sort of continued. I can't stress enough that as a university, we're made up of people. There are things that we do here, and we develop ideas at a university, and we communicate those ideas by teaching and by doing research and sending ideas out into the world. and people are a key part of that. The staff within CSE are essential to this. The types of people that make up CSE, there's sort of the faculty, the students, the administration, and the staff. And if you think about those are like four legs of a table. If any one of those isn't at the right height, doing the performing sort of in an optimal capacity, you have a wobbly table, and you don't have a really a solid organization. And that's why I really appreciate you all taking the time out to ensure that you're doing what you need to make sure that you're operating and doing your job the best you can. Now, management is a really important process to consistently and equitably create goals that contribute to the work that you need to do, and also a means to provide and receive feedback to improve performance and support development. A lot of times people think about performance reviews as sort of a fearful thing, like you're being evaluated and graded. If they're done well, they're actually an opportunity to yes, point out where things can be improved, but it's also an opportunity to celebrate success and say, this is where things are going really well, and here's how your career could lay out over the next several years within this organization. And so the investment that you can put in to help the supervisors, and the investment the supervisors can put in to help capitalize on the opportunities of the individual should be seen in a really, really positive light. And the fact that you're all sitting here doing this training actually speaks to that. So again, thank you very much, because it's been shown over and over again that effective performance management really increases retention and engagement and satisfaction of talent in an organization. And we want to keep that talent within CSE being satisfied and engaged and successful, because then that leg of the table we know is going to be really solid. So again, have a great workshop. Thanks for everything you do, and look forward to seeing all the great things that come out as a result of your efforts. So thanks again, CSE staff. So I want to thank you all for joining the CSE Annual Review Workshop for employees.
Okay, and we're back. Sorry about that. So hopefully you picked up on the theme from the message that the dean just shared, that hopefully this time you find it as something that's really positive. It's a way to celebrate your accomplishments. It's a way to be more engaged, to get that feedback from your supervisor, have those feedback conversations, to understand how you contributed to the team and to CSE over the past year based on the work and the process or projects and all of the goals that you accomplished over this past year. So this is Simplified Performance Management. Again, we're going to take a quick spin through some of these first pieces that we've shared with CSE before, and then most of our time today will be spent on that last phase, that formal review process, to give you strategies in order for you to be effective as you close out the year and as you write your narrative to share with your supervisor about your performance. So on this slide, there are the three components that we refer to when we are talking about performance management. By definition, performance management is a collection of these activities designed to improve individual and organizational performance, such as setting goals at the beginning of the year that are broad and challenging, having ongoing conversations, or those quality conversations throughout the year in order to monitor progress, get feedback, understand how things are going, course correct if needed in real time throughout the year. And then finally, at the end, having that formal review, having a meaningful conversation and discussion about the year in review. Data produced in this process are often used to make decisions about people, including job assignments, development, promotions, terminations, etc. So it's really important that this is done equitably and effectively. So the process starts with setting goals. So that's what hopefully everybody did about a year ago to understand what work needed to be accomplished throughout the past year. Goals, they're the foundation for the performance management process. They essentially are the agenda for the work in the coming year. The purpose of the goal is to get the right work done effectively. And in order to achieve that purpose, goals should be written in a way that are strategic and are effective. So the strategies for writing or setting effective goals are there on the slide. So first, it should be simple. So goals should be specific, important, and measurable. So it should be very clear Describe both the what and the how. It should be clear what needs to be accomplished and how or what behavior or actions you as an employee need to take in order to accomplish them. They should be aligned with your team or your department, college as a whole, so aligned in a way that it is contributing to advancing whatever larger priority may exist. They should be limited or few in number at any one given time. There should be no more than 1 to 3 goals. It may be the case that halfway through the year a goal is accomplished, and at that time it might be a conversation between you and your manager to understand, do you have the capacity to take on another goal, or maybe just the remaining goals, that's enough, enough of a workload in order to work on. So at the end of the year, there may be more than 3 goals running down if you did pick up other goals throughout the years, as your initial goals were accomplished, but any one given time to 1 to 3 goals is the most effective. And then flexible. So goals should be flexed in real time. And that's what is helpful with the ongoing conversations throughout the year, that you can adjust them in real time as resources become maybe more or less available. Maybe it's team members changing, maybe it's a budget thing, maybe it's a space thing, whatever that may be, but they're flexed in a way that continue to support you in your success in achieving those. So next is ongoing check-ins. So these are the conversations that occur throughout the year between a manager and an employee. And this is the when and where performance management is happening. These types of conversations, they might not necessarily be new to you and your manager, like with the simplified performance management process. They could be the one-on-one meetings that you're having on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis already. But when it comes to these ongoing check-ins specifically, it is important to check in about goals. So maybe you're having conversations about operational things or daily tasks quite frequently with your manager, but at least quarterly for 15-20 minutes, have a short check-in specifically about your goals. So dedicating some intended time to talk about your goals. So you do understand, you do get feedback on them, you do understand or make adjustments in real time as needed. You can discuss questions, all of those pieces. So these are the strategies for the ongoing check-in, or how to have an ongoing check-in. There's a quick guide resource available. We'll refer to some resources at the end of the workshop today for you to connect to. For our quick guides, they are tailored to supervisor audience, but they're available for anybody to access. So at a really high level, ongoing check-ins are most effective when there's that clear expectation at the beginning, discussing those roles and responsibilities. So both you as the employee, what you need to bring to the table or to the conversation, and what the supervisor will be doing as well. So it should be an active participatory discussion. And then during the check-ins, it should be, again, focused on the goals, at least quarterly for 15 to 20 minutes, updating, reviewing, evaluating, getting that feedback that is needed to help support you throughout the year. And then that last one is determining the next step. So that who does what by when step. So between that meeting and their next meeting, it's clear about what action needs to occur. And then the last piece, which we're going to dive into today, today's focus, is this effective performance evaluations at the end of the year. So we're going to talk about the writing piece. That's where the employee input, and you have the most action, or that's the action you need to take in order, or for this part of the process. We're going to go to high level for the other pieces as well, so you can see the connections. We're not going to focus on all of the specific steps that you can see here. Here's the overall process. Some of them are for supervisors only, so we won't focus on those steps, but other ones we wanted to make sure that you were aware of and connected around. And again, there's a quick guide for this. Again, super tailored to the supervisory audience, but available for anybody to reference. So when it comes to performance management, this is a question often asked, and it's really common and easy to think that performance management or your performance review, it's about that form. So where do I get the form? How do I access the form? What do I need to complete? We like to think with the simplified process, performance management is about driving progress toward important goals and priorities, and not just about filling out that form. So it's really what happens during the year, as mentioned earlier, and generating those ideas and discussing those ideas and getting feedback throughout the year. It's not just a one-time a single event during any particular year. So there is a form. We will talk about the form. We have some screenshots and some resources to connect you with. So we're going to see that before we close out the workshop today and answer any questions you may have. But before doing that, more importantly, strategies to write a meaningful performance review, and then some expectations about the delivery as well. So when you meet with your supervisor, what you can expect during that process. A reminder to some, maybe for those of you that are new to CSE or new to this, maybe this is your first year as an employee at the U, to understand those expectations in the meeting as well. So the first piece to the performance evaluation is preparing. So it's getting ready, collecting all the information that you have in order to write a thorough review. So a 2-item checklist here. So when it comes to gathering information, it's understanding where your goals at, are they updated? Do they need some updating? And any conversations or notes from meetings that you have had with your supervisor throughout the year. So maybe you have a running list of bulleted items or meeting agendas that you can quick grab from and craft or revise into your performance evaluation. So if you did set goals already and you did have ongoing conversations, it might be pretty easy to just grab that information and shape into a performance or your employee input for the narrative piece of the performance evaluation. But if not, this is something you can do at any point. So maybe you didn't do it this past year, but going forward, that might be a strategy that you start implementing in order to save yourself some time in the long run. So if you start now, a year from now, you'll be better positioned to have all of this stuff easy access. So step 1 and 2 here is really gathering input. So as you prepare, it's starting by gathering the input. And step 1 there is the main focus of the employees, what you need to participate in as an employee for this process. You'll be asked to complete and share the employee input form with your supervisor. Again, if you've been, capturing that information throughout the year, it might be really quick and easy to grab. If not, it's just looking at your performance over the past year and writing to what you have accomplished and celebrating all of the work that you have done. So when you are writing your employee input, as it lists there, it's really effective to reflect on what was the situation happening, what did you do, what actions did you take, the results. So that's the what and the how piece that we mentioned a moment ago in the goals section, and then also the impact. So what was the outcome of that, and who did that impact, or what did that improve or make more efficient, or change or positively advance moving forward. So speaking to that impact piece as well. You will not be asked to provide a self-rating. Self-ratings are typically inflated and usually sets up for an unproductive or defensive conversation, especially when the self-rating and the supervisor rating don't align. So rather than focusing on the self-rating, or rather than being asked to provide that, you'll be asked to provide this employee input piece. So your narrative about your performance over the previous year. Step 2 there, asking others for input. This is something you can do as an employee, but this is a step mainly for supervisors. They may be asking others for input about your performance. So they would get your employee input from step 1, their own observations. And then this is a way to kind of broaden their understanding about your contribution to the projects or the goals that you worked on by asking others for input. So this could be any others that you worked with. It could be maybe students, other leaders, peers, team members. So whatever, might make sense. Your supervisor might be reaching out to ask others for input as well. And then once you gather the information, it's writing it. From the supervisor standpoint, they would have gathered information again from you, from their own observations, their own notes, or conversations that they've had with you throughout the year, potentially others as well. So gathering input from others, and then it's sitting down to write the performance review. So your supervisor will write that narrative again, using specific examples about the what and the how and the impact. So what did you achieve? How did you achieve it, and what was that impact? So again, connecting it to the goals or expanding on, the expectations that were set at the beginning of the year for you. From that, they will also be providing a rating. The rating will be based on the narrative. It provides context and justification. That narrative provides context and justification for the rating, and is reflective of your behavior or your performance over the past year. So 3 rating levels, exceeds expectations there on the bottom. that would mean, or that would be reflective of performance that is consistently beyond the expectations that were set at the beginning of the year. So it's not just exceeding the daily operational work that is done, but also the goals. So it is going above and beyond when it comes to the goals or the expectations that were set at the beginning of the year, and doing it across the board, or doing it consistently, or going well above and beyond consistently. Meets expectations, that would reflect performance that is, again, doing just that, meeting expectations, that an employee is performing exactly as they're expected to do. They're doing a really good job at it. At times, maybe it's something that goes above and beyond and exceeds expectations, but it might not be as consistent as that exceeds expectations. And then the requires improvement rating is one that an employee would receive their performance doesn't meet expectations. I'm going to pause there. Any questions, or Eric, anything to add to this ratings piece?
No, I think you've provided a good overview, and I think that reflective of others' questions. Certainly if there's offline conversation or discussions, or things that they want to talk through, I'm available, and we'll definitely be there to answer any questions that folks might have.
Thank you. And one other thing about ratings, again, ratings are often the focus of performance evaluations because they are that concrete, very specific number. However, having a more complex rating scale doesn't necessarily equate to a better process. It's really about the narrative and about the feedback and the description of the performance that the narrative provides. So rather than focusing just on that particular rating, it really should be focused on that narrative piece and getting that feedback that is more meaningful than a specific label of the rating scale. And in that yellowish box, I guess, maybe it's gold, that you can see there, it says most employees that work hard and deliver results will fit within that meets expectations. So that's where most people should fall when it comes to performance, because that is what most performance is. It's meeting expectations. And then after the writing, gathering the input, preparing, writing, it's the delivery piece of it. So eventually when it comes to that stage in the process, and I know Eric will be sharing some dates and some timelines here, so you'll know a little bit more specifically what to when to expect this. But when it comes to delivering the review, so a couple of things before the meeting, making sure that you have the time and space, testing any technology, which sometimes can be a distractor. So making sure that everything is working well. The written review is often shared before the meeting as well. So it gives you some time to review it, kind of process it, think about it, maybe bring more meaningful questions to the performance review. Ensuring that written review, I think it's it doesn't have to be far in advance, and sometimes it depends on how the capacity your supervisor has in order to get when they have the time to write the reviews. But even sharing it an hour ahead of time in order to read through it can sometimes be helpful. And then during the meeting, so when you sit down with your supervisor during the meeting, some things to expect at that point, it's understanding the process, providing any context, discussing the narrative, clarifying it, and you will have a chance to read the narrative. So maybe having more of a discussion about additional feedback or questions you may have because based on the narrative, ways to celebrate, ways to really be proud of the work and the accomplishments that you did over the past year. Also the rating, again, how it's determined, it should be the narrative should reflect how the rating was determined. Time to ask questions, time to give thoughts, provide additional feedback. So before we move into the system piece, again, I'll just pause here if there's any questions that anybody has about the process side. Again, just focusing on as from the employee piece of it, it's really writing that employee input, which would then get routed to your supervisor as a piece of input for the performance evaluation that they would write for you. I'm not seeing any questions, but Eric, please stop me if any pop up. The performance appraisal tool is a system designed to support the process. So the process itself of setting the goals and having that conversations and meeting with your supervisor throughout the year and having this formal, meaningful review and conversation at the end, that's really what performance management is about. And the tool here itself is just a way to support it and make it more efficient for you to to engage in it throughout the year. It's coordinated through the Office of Human Resources. It's available university-wide. Most units and colleges are on it yet, although not everybody is on it yet. Hopefully everybody will be adopting it soon. So hopefully this will work. I'm going to click on the link here. And this, again, we will share this slide deck with you afterwards. So you'll have all of the references and all of the slides for to reference the resources. Here, when you click on the performance management tool or performance management site, this is the hub of all things performance management that OHR has collected for your reference and for your resources. Eric?
Nope, just anticipating here, the next slide's coming up, so sorry.
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing a question.
Yep.
So when you click on this link, it takes you to the performance management website. Again, there's an overview of performance management, lots of different tools, links, guides to click on to use for reference throughout the process or at the end of the year. Over here, it goes specifically into goals. So if you click here, it's additional information about goals, additional information about ongoing check-ins, and additional information about performance evaluations, which is a lot of the resources that we're sharing here today. Here's the performance appraisal tool. So in order to get into the system itself, it would be clicking on that particular link. It brings you to this page. Down here, employee access to the PAT, supervisor access to the PAT are the two main areas that you might need to access. So when you click on this access link, it does take you to the login information. So it is specific, and unfortunately, I don't have a sandbox example to play around with, but we will show you some screenshots here in a moment. So that's where you would actually get into the PAT login to access your goals, to update your goals, to interact with the system in any way, shape, or form. Hopefully you have found the PAT pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of options. There are a lot of places to get lost, but here there's also a guide and a video to help navigate PAT. So if you do want a refresher, or if you do want some additional information or details about where to point and click, or explanation about what is in the system, there are the guide and the video there as well. There's no formal training for it. This would be, I guess, the formal training. It's really kind of just in time, or what works for you, kind of independent, or you can always reach out to Eric or myself if you do have specific questions about that. So moving into the screenshot. So if you were to log into the PAT system, the employee view, you'll see that on the left-hand side of the screen, there's supervisor view on the other right-hand side of the screen. So when you log in, this would be the landing page that you land on. It would give all of your information, some additional descriptions and instructions about the PAT. There at the bottom in the red circle there for the employee view, the goal maintenance and the performance evaluation. So those are the only two link options that you have. So again, not a lot of places to get lost in the system. The first one there, goals, clicking on that takes you to this particular page. And this, you can add your title, the description, the completion date. Again, it's open year throughout the year. So you can update, add as you go throughout the year, or change if needed. One kind of note to caution, or cautionary note for this one, is the goals will save, but if you overwrite anything, there's no history to it. So if you delete something or rewrite over something, it's not going to save that history. At the end, though, it will grab the goals that you have there, and that will be captured in like the archived performance evaluation. So they are reflected at the end, but throughout, it doesn't save the different versions that you may have throughout the year. And number two, if you were from that landing page, if you were to go to that number 2 option, it brings you to this, which is the performance evaluation. There again, on the left-hand side is the employee view. Part 1 is about your key accomplishments and contributions. So that's that what piece of it. And part 3 there is, I guess part 1 is the goals. That's where the part 1 comes in. Sorry about that. Part 2 is the key accomplishments and contribution. And part 3 is the behavioral competency. So how you did it. So this is where you're writing about the what and the how piece of achieving your goals and what you achieved that year. On the supervisor side, It is shared. So what the employee has in their view, the supervisor will also see in their view. Supervisors also have an additional box. If there's something specific they just need to keep under their supervisor access, that's available to them. At the end of the year, and you'll get emails from the system as the performance evaluation is officially launched. And again, Eric will, I think the next slide, there's dates about when this will happen. These views are separated so that allow you time to write your employee input before it then gets routed to the supervisor for them to review and reflect and use that to inform their performance evaluation. So again, these are the three, I think 3 or 4 pages of the PAT system itself. And again, hopefully it's pretty intuitive how to use it and navigate it in order to support writing your performance evaluation. Okay, I'll turn it over to Eric to talk about the next steps.
Terrific. Thanks, Christina. Again, as far as providing the information, Christina, just want to say thank you. Again, a lot of helpful tools and resources here for all of you that are on the Zoom call today. And part of the challenge, of course, is, we spend this time, we go through this information, and it's a lot to go through, a lot to absorb, a lot to take in. If you're new to CSE too, it's a whole new sort of world too, in terms of navigating what this process looks like, and how it is that it impacts employees and supervisors alike. So it's critical and important. And as Dean Aline said from the beginning, it's one that we really want to practice, mindfully and intentionally, so that we're really encouraging these ongoing conversations between employees and supervisors. So there's opportunities to be able to look at what the goals are that were established in the beginning of the review period, and having this continual emphasis around checking in and just making sure that there's alignment. And certainly things can change. We certainly have seen that through much of the last couple of years. And so we want the review format too to be flexible as well, to be able to acknowledge that there can be things that change, priorities change, different activities change, and we want to be mindful of that and make sure that that's reflected and captured in the review. But to Christina's point, there are some upcoming dates here that are going to be important to keep in mind and think about. Hard to believe that in a week's time, the review period here at CSE will come to an end on February 28th. As that happens, then there's going to be emphasis around preparing and getting the review put together and ready to be able to share with all of you. So part of that, as Christina said, is working on your own sort of narrative here. And so for the month of March, there's activity there for you to be able to have an opportunity to prepare that information and get that submitted to your supervisor. And then the supervisor then in turn will look at that information, review that information, and is also then working on their own portion of the review process here, which goes obviously to the supervisor's evaluation as well. Beginning in April, again, the supervisor is continuing to have worked on the performance evaluations in March and April, so that by the time we get into April, by the end of the month, all the reviews are completed and entered into the PAT system. Here again, there's opportunities for the supervisor and employee, however, to need to discuss the review before those are completed and entered in. So that's a chance in April to be able to have those conversations. And then, of course, beginning in May, we start to look at the next fiscal year period and start to discuss goals and what it is that we're going to think about and want to accomplish in the coming review period. So a neat opportunity, again, to be able to have that conversation with the supervisor and be able to have an opportunity to talk through that and think about what are the ways in which we can, help in terms of development. Again, as Dean Aline pointed out, as we look at the engagement survey, there are clear indications that there's opportunities there to be able to have those conversations be a bit more robust. And I think that certainly is an opportunity here in May to, again, have those kind of conversations and really looking at opportunities to be able to have employees develop and pursue some of the things that they're interested in as well. And then again, ongoing conversations. Can't emphasize this enough, but through the review period, this is something that is really we want to encourage. We want to make sure is happening because I think absent there being these ongoing and regular conversations, it just becomes sort of a one and done exercise at the end of the year, and we certainly don't want that. This is something that is again really important to emphasize throughout the review period, and those connection points between supervisors and employees is something that we really want to emphasize. So I think that was the majority of the information for this slide, but certainly if there's any questions, certainly throw those in chat or speak up. Otherwise, I will definitely be available for any questions. Please reach out. Happy to sit down if you're working here in person. I'm here in person throughout the week, so if there's an opportunity to connect in person, great. Otherwise, happy to schedule a Zoom call and talk through any questions that you might have as well. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. The other commonly asked question that has come up in other workshops that I've done when it for performance reviews with other colleges and units that we work with is that narrative piece of it and how best to write it. And I would say write it, or there's no right or wrong way to write your employee input. So we'll write it in whatever way that speaks best to your journey of performance or to your accomplishments over the past year. So when it comes to sitting down to actually go and write that narrative, sometimes people find it helpful to make a bulleted list based on the goals that they've had. So maybe it's something short but really powerful when it comes to answering what you accomplished, how you accomplished it, and the impact that it had on those that you work with across the university. Other people, like the narrative, like that's just their style. They can write paragraphs after paragraphs, but speaking again to the goals. So that might be something too. You don't have to be your comfort or your love of writing shouldn't necessarily negatively impact the performance that you write about. So if you do have questions about that, please feel free. There's no right or wrong way to write that narrative. It's in whatever way that best reflects your work and your accomplishments over the past year. And Eric, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. Sometimes people ask, like, is it bullets? Is it sentences? Whatever. Maybe check in with your supervisor, maybe how they like to receive it. But it's really just write it in a meaningful way.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. Thanks. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that part of the challenge, of course, is, right, how do I go about, making a collective statement about what it is that I've been able to do over the past year, and how to do that in a way that is, going to give, credence and visibility to that information. And I think my counsel has always been, I think there's those that prefer a narrative. I think there's others that are bulleted, unless, again, that, as you mentioned, there's some, agreement or understanding between the supervisor and employee as to what, format that might take. I'm always going back to the individual to say, well, what is it that they're most comfortable with, in terms of that narrative style. I don't necessarily want to say that it must be this or it must be that. I think that it needs to, again, allow for some flexibility to reflect what it is that the employee is most comfortable with in terms of sharing out that information. So it certainly would be something that I would be reinforcing if asked the question here in terms of what format that should take.
Yeah, any other questions about the information so far? I've not seen any. I'm going to flip through the last couple of slides that Eric and I prepared were about resources. So this first one here, that's the performance management site that I walked through a moment ago. This is kind of your one-stop shop or your hub for all things performance management. It's a great place to start. And most of the links, as I demonstrated, are on that left-hand side there. So if there's something more specific or access to the performance appraisal tool, whatever that might be, that's you can find most of it on the left-hand side there. And then the other piece is the supervising.umn.edu, our supervisory development course. resources, guides, quick guides, and whatnot. The target audience for this is supervisors, but it is available to everybody. Performance management, with it being a piece of the supervisor role, the performance management and the supervisor, or the performance management tools and resources on the supervisory site overlap. So it pulls from the same set of resources and tools and quick guides and videos. The supervisory development site that was broader beyond just performance management, it goes into other topics that supervisors need to engage in here at the U. But again, just for your reference, another place to explore resources and additional information if that is something that would be helpful to you. And with that, we just wanted to, again, provide the opportunity if there are any additional questions that you may have thought of in the last few moments here, or if there's anything else that would be helpful for us to share or clarify, please unmute and share or throw it in the chat. Either way works for us. And as you maybe think of that or throw your question in the chat, if you do have any, again, you'll be getting the slide deck from Eric. We'll be sending it out along with the recording. So you will have all this information for reference. I always recommend, as you actually go to sit down or you're pulling stuff together, this is really good information, whether it's just flipping through the slide deck or going to the site to pull up the performance evaluation quick guide, just as a good point of reference as you complete this process, again, to make sure it is as effective as it can be to support you in being successful to craft your narrative around your performance and everything that you've accomplished over the past year. Eric, any additional thoughts? I'm not seeing any questions, so hopefully at this point everything is clear to everybody attending today.
Well, I think as you said, Christina, there's going to be links and other information here that they'll be able to access to the extent that there's any remaining questions or things that they want to clarify. Certainly, again, myself, I'll be available for questions as well. Christina, it goes without saying, thank you again for your time in facilitating today's training. Really appreciate it. And for those on the call, again, I look forward to opportunities to be able to connect with you here in this capacity as an HR director. I'm really looking forward to that. And appreciate all of you for joining today's really important discussion. Have a great rest of your afternoon.